Hi everyone, Kelly here, and it's getting close to the time when I want to take a bunch of books to Unhaul, and so in order to do that, I want to get through a couple more of my Try a Chapter Unhaul edition. So if you haven't seen these before on my channel, I'll link the playlist down below, but for I don't know, the last 6 months or so, every once in a while I take some books off my shelf that I'm not sure I'm still interested in, and I read the first chapter, and then I either decide to keep them and read them or put them in the unhaul pile. And I know that now that I'm fully vaccinated, I'm going to be taking these books finally. I have a ton of books that have been sitting in my basement ready to unhaul, and so I really want to get through these last groups of Try a Chapters so that I can just include these with the unhaul. So I have 6 books today that I want to try a chapter. I say today, but I'm probably going to take this over the next couple days and take my time reading these, and so I'll just come in once I've read a chapter and let you know what I think of it. Everything in this today is either YA fantasy or adult thrillers. Those are the 2 categories that I have that just happen to be how I split them up. I kept the contemporaries separate, and the historical fiction I'll do another time. So let's start off first with the adult thrillers. I have If Tomorrow Comes by Cindy Sheldon. I got this at a used bookstore because I had read a couple other books by Cindy Sheldon about 4 years ago now, and he wrote thriller books, I think back in the 70s is about when he was writing. This one was in the 80s, so 70s, 80s, something like that. And I did like the 2 that I read about 4 years ago. So one time when I was at a thrift store, I picked this up, but I haven't had any pull to pick it up. I don't know if it's because it's a mass market and I don't usually like those. But yeah, I'll let you know the synopsis when I actually read the first chapter, because I don't know anything about this one. And then the other adult thriller is The Secret She Keeps by Michael Robotham. And this was one I didn't hear from anybody. It was one of those days I was going on, I think some place like Book Outlet or something like that. And I was just looking for adult thrillers because I was in the mood. And a lot of them I bought just based on the cover or the description or the Goodreads rating. But I hadn't actually heard anybody talk about them. And this is one of those. So we'll find out what it's about and if it seems interesting, because I've never even heard of this author either. All right, and then I have 4 YA fantasy books. So first I have Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge, and I think that this one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but kind of has more twists involved with it. And I've heard a lot about Rosamund Hodge being kind of you either love her or you don't. And so there's a lot of mixed reviews about it, and so I really just want to try the first couple chapters and see if her writing works for me, and if it doesn't, then no problem, I'll get rid of it. But if she works for me personally, then I know she has a few other retellings that I think would be fun to read. And then I have, this next one's not really fantasy, it's more magical realism, but I have The Weight of Feathers by Anna Marie McLemore, and I had read Wild Beauty by McLemore I think last year, and it was a little too flowery for my taste, but I liked the use of magical realism, so I wanted to give them one more chance since I actually own 2 of their books, so probably will give 2 more chances. But this is the one that I am less interested in, so I kept the other book on my shelves to try later, but this is the one that I'm not sure, because a lot of people that even love Anna Marie McLemore put this as one of their least favorite of theirs. So yeah, we'll give it a try. It's magical realism, kind of flowery writing. And then I have a book actually the next 2 books I picked up in Little Fairy Libraries, and I didn't know really anything about them when I picked them up. And so I have Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley Doyle. I'm assuming this is a witchy type book, which I'm not really into witches, so I'm not sure why I picked it up, other than probably there wasn't much else in that little free library, so I thought I'd give it a chance. And then I have Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton, and I did hear about this series when it first came out, and then didn't really hear about it again for the last year or so. So I don't know if that means it didn't really make a splash on BookTube, or if people didn't continue the series or what, but really, yeah, I haven't heard anything else after this first book. I think it's a series. And so yeah, I don't know actually anything about this other than I'm assuming it takes place in a desert based on the title and the cover. So yeah, those are the 6 books, some fantasy and some thrillers. I will try them throughout the next couple days. Okay, so I read the first couple chapters of the 2 thrillers. I was reading outside, as you could tell from the last clip, and was just about to like tell you my thoughts. Outside it was nice and beautiful, and then my daughter comes up to me looking like this. I'll show you what she looked like. Yeah, she pretty much always looks like that the day after it rains because she just cannot keep herself from going in mud. Like, she just loves mud so much. So I had to go in and, give her a full on shower and clean her up and all that stuff. So now it's like a couple hours later, and I'm probably going to tell you what I think about the first couple chapters. So I did read 2 chapters of each of these because in this book, it's told from 2 perspectives. And a lot of times when stories are told from multiple perspectives, I like to try both just so I can kind of see, are the voices different for the 2 narrators? Does it as in the narrative style different, or does it sound like just the same person the whole time? Like, what are the different perspectives and all that? And this one, it was because the first chapter was 3 pages long. So let me talk about this one first. So The Secret She Keeps is told from 2 perspectives. It's 2 women that are pregnant, Agatha and Megan. And so I read a chapter from each of them. Agatha works at a convenience store, grocery store, something like that. And she is kind of stalking the other woman, Megan. Like, she sees her come in the store. She watches her every day every week when she goes to a mom's group across the street at the cafe. Megan writes a blog, and Agatha reads the blog faithfully and basically envisions Megan as this perfect mom of 2 kids, another one on the way, and perfect husband. She has this idealized version of Megan in her mind. And then we start following Megan in the second chapter, and we kind of learn maybe her life isn't completely perfect. Of course, never is, that her and her husband don't seem to be getting along, and that this pregnancy wasn't really planned and all this stuff. So so that's basically it. We just kind of are knowing, we're setting up that Agatha is stalking Megan and that Megan isn't as perfect as what it seems. And that's pretty much all that I got from the first 2 chapters. I just didn't find them that interesting. It was quite a lot that I read because 2 chapters worth was 20 some pages, 25 pages, which is a good amount to kind of know if I'm being pulled in, and nothing in that 25 pages really kept my interest. I didn't find anything compelling, and so I decided to go look up some reviews and just see, and this does get good reviews in terms of the ratings. I think it was over a 4, which is good for a thriller. But I was looking at some reviews, and I'm usually good about not spoiling myself for a thriller because, most people will hide their spoilers, or, they might, put their spoilers later in the review. But of course, somebody put a major spoiler in the beginning of their review. And so, when you look at Goodreads and you're just scrolling through the different reviews and you haven't opened them on your phone or whatever, you see the first couple sentences that somebody writes, and somebody put a major spoiler for it in the beginning of their review without any warning. It just it didn't really pull me in enough to want to read it, even though I know what's kind of which direction this is going in. So I'm getting rid of this. And then like I said, I read the first couple chapters of this book, and that first chapter that's 3 pages long is a pretty explosive beginning. I don't want to say what it is, because even though it happens in the first 3 pages, it's not in the summary. So I'm not going to tell you what happens in the first 3 pages, but it is, just something really big happens. And then the second chapter is kind of just the setup. So how some books do that, where they might start with something explosive, but then we kind of go back to following our main character in their everyday life and see kind of the setup. So that's what happened in the second chapter is that we are following a woman named Tracy who works at a bank. And it was kind of interesting in that chapter because this is written in the 80s and she's talking about how she's been working at this bank. She does money transfers, and that computers have changed her job completely. And just so it's kind of fascinating to like see that somebody working in the banking world when computers started being part of that world of like, like computer transfers and stuff, wireless transfers, money transfers and all that stuff. Like that was a little fascinating of just like seeing that, now of course we do so much of our banking with computers and online. So it was just kind of interesting to see that, the beginning of that in the banking world. So she works at this bank, and she's about to get married to her boyfriend. She's meeting her boyfriend's parents, who are very rich. They're not in the same like class or whatever. And so she's nervous about meeting his super rich parents and all that. And then she gets some bad news, which I'm not going to tell you about either, because even though it's at the beginning, it's not in the synopsis again. But what is in the synopsis is that this is a book about revenge. I think it's going to be a ride, is what I think. And I was really pulled in. Like that first chapter definitely pulled me in. I probably could have just read those 3 pages and been hooked. But I did want to kind of see the development of the character, and I was interested in her as a character, and I want to see where it goes, if this is going to become a revenge plot. I think it'll be interesting to see this woman that's, like just a unassuming banker who's about to get married. I want to know how this turns into a revenge plot for her. So I think I'm going to keep that one. So yeah, 1 out of 2 is pretty good. All right, 2 more down. So I read 2 of the fantasy books. First is Cruel Beauty, which, like I said, is a Beauty and the Beast retelling or reimagining. The first chapter kind of just sets that up. So we're following a girl named Nyx, and we learn in the first chapter that her father made some kind of bargain. We don't know exactly what the bargain is, but the result of it is that when she turns a certain age, I don't know what age this is, she has to marry this demon. I believe that's how she describes him. And she doesn't have any choice. So she's been kind of knowing this her whole life, that she's going to have to marry this demon when she comes of age. And this first chapter is her it's the night before her wedding. And so she's saying goodbye to her family. And we're just kind of getting the setup of how that is happening. And I have to say that this book had the very best first line of any of the books that I have read so far. Like, it hooked me in from the beginning. The first line is, "I was raised to marry a monster." And so that pulled me in immediately. I enjoyed this first chapter. I thought it was interesting. It pulled me in. It made me want to see what happens next. It probably helps that I really like Beauty and the Beast retellings, and this one seems to have some interesting elements in it. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep this one. I don't know if I'll continue reading it right now, but I do want to keep this on my shelves, and I am more interested in it now than I was before, because like I said, it does get a lot of mixed reviews, and I think people either love or hate her writing, and I was fine with it so far. I don't know how I'm going to end up liking it overall, but I was pulled in a lot. And then I picked up Rebel of the Sands. Basically, we're following in the first chapter this girl, Amani, and she's disguised as a man. They're in the desert, and so most of her face is covered, like with something you would wear in the desert to keep the sand off of your face. And she goes to this shooting competition because she's been training her whole life with a gun, I guess, and she's trying to win a prize in this competition to get out of her hometown. Basically is what happens in the first chapter. But so I know that's the plot of the first chapter, that's what's happening, but do you ever have those things where you're reading and nothing is like sticking in your mind? Like, there were times when I would read a paragraph, I'm like, what did that say? And I don't know if it's me not really being pulled in, or if it's the writing. But there were sometimes when the writing just seemed weird to me, like the structure of the sentence and like the narrative voice just seemed off for me. And so I was having a hard time, like that 13 pages, I kept like, I actually fell asleep at one point, like literally like, you know, head bob type thing, and then had to kind of like go back and reread some paragraphs because I was just like, did I even read that paragraph at all? Yeah, so I just don't think I'm connecting with this story. Maybe if I had read more, I would get into it some, but I'm at the point where, you know, like I don't know really anything about this. I haven't heard people raving about it or anything lately, so it really does not compel me to keep trying to push through when that first chapter just, yeah, it just fell off to me. I didn't like it. So once again, of these two, keeping one, getting rid of one. So I'm feeling good so far about how this is going. I have 2 more to read. I'm taking a break now, so we'll see if I do it later tonight or like after the kids go to bed, or whether I wait until tomorrow morning to finish those next 2 chapters. All right, so I have read the first 2 chapters of the last 2 books. You saw me just now reading this one, but I read the beginning of this one last night, right, you know, like in bed before going to sleep. So I didn't film that, you know, reading that clip. And once again, keeping one, getting rid of one. So let me just say that, you know, like I said, I had read Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore a year or so ago, and the writing was very flowery. I didn't think it was for me, and so I wanted to give other of their books a chance because I had bought several of their books before even reading one. And yeah, I just don't think that Anna Marie McLemore's writing is for me, unfortunately. I read this first chapter and I don't mesh well with the writing, and I feel really bad because I know a lot of people really love this author, but I just think the flowery writing just is not for me. This one specifically is kind of like a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It's about 2 families that are like performers, like kind of like circus performers. They're and they are rivals, and of course like a girl from one family and a boy from another family meet and fall for each other when their families are enemies. Yeah, so that's basically what the concept is, which sounds like a great concept, interesting, but yeah, that first chapter just proved for me that their writing isn't for me. I do own one other book by Anna Marie McLemore. I think it's When the Moon Was Ours, and the topic of that one and the things I've heard about that book interested me more, so I'm gonna give it a try. I might end up DNFing that one as well, but I at least want to give it a try since I own it. But yeah, this one I am passing on. Somebody else will love their writing, just not me. But then the spell book for the Lost and Found, I ended up actually reading 4 chapters of this. I downloaded the ebook so that I could like read it in bed and not hold this big book. So I'm trying to see how far I actually made it in this book. I ended up reading 34 pages. The reason I ended up reading 4 chapters was because this book is told from different perspectives. And like I said in a book earlier in this video, I like to read different perspectives. And there's 3 different perspectives. And it was like the first chapter was Olive, the second chapter was Lauren, and then we went back to Olive and then Hazel. So I ended up reading 4 chapters in order to get all the perspectives. And I would say after reading those 4 chapters, I feel pretty hooked and wanted to keep reading last night, but I was like, okay, I'm going to put it down. I have other things I need to be reading right now, but I do want to continue this book. I've read a lot of reviews and say it's kind of confusing and there's a lot of characters, but I was sucked in already from those first 4 chapters. And this is basically following, each of those chapters is following a girl, and it's kind of all revolves around this night of this big bonfire in town, and everybody has lost something, and one of the groups did like a spell in order to find the things that they lost and the ramifications that that spell has on the town and the people in it. So it sounds pretty interesting. Like I said earlier, I'm not usually into witchy books, but I don't know, I was just really compelled by those first 4 chapters. The fact that I sped through those 4 chapters and wanted to keep going shows that I have interest in it. So that means out of the 6 things that I read for this Unhaul edition, I'm keeping 3 and getting rid of 3. So I think that's a really good thing. For review, I'm keeping If Tomorrow Comes, Cruel Beauty and Spellbook of the Lost and Found. All of those I felt really pulled in by the first chapter or two that I read, and then I'm getting rid of The Secret She Keeps, Rebel of Sands, and The Weight of Feathers. There was nothing wrong necessarily with any of these books. They just didn't pull me in, and after reading some reviews and things like that, I just don't think that they are for me, and I'm ready to get some stuff off of my shelf. And that's it for this tri-chapter Unhaul edition. If you've read any of these and you want to talk about them, I'd love to hear from you down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.